Show me the original key now in front of everyone. Or let the law ask, are you sober? My daughter-in-law said in the middle of the wedding hall. Half a beat after I said no, the slap echoed across the 200 guests. I left the party, put the red envelope on the kitchen table, and set in motion a plan where every decision would be made through process, not noise. I made it clear to them, respect is not an inheritance. Keys are not a wedding gift. It was not the time to demand a transfer of ownership at the wedding. The truth will only be known when people are truly respected. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. The wedding had slipped into cocktail hour, warm lights washing the glossy floor. White flowers mingled with champagne, laughter looping between the round tables. I stood near the bar with a glass of water, eyes hunting for Daniel in the crowd. He was chatting with relatives, avoiding looking my way in a clumsy, obvious arc. Ashley slid in from the left, a black velvet box glinting under the lights. She smiled politely, tight at the corners, her eyes measuring every inch. "Dad," she said, loud enough for the cluster around us to hear, "there are kids at home. I need a spare set of keys in case of an emergency." She flipped the lid so the key ring caught the light like a prop on stage. Heads turned. A spoon paused mid-clink over glass. I lowered my glass and met her eyes, voice level. "Not now and not here. We'll handle it by email, with time on the calendar and paperwork in order." Daniel took half a step toward us, then stalled, staring into the rim of his cup. Ashley edged closer, pitched her voice a notch higher, each word chosen to land. "You're getting old, Dad. The baby is little. We have to keep the house safe. I need the original keys and the paperwork, so we don't have trouble later." The DJ slid the volume down. The music thinned, leaving space between sentences. I nodded once, still calm. "No, this doesn't get decided in a ballroom. Keys and documents are private business, process, and the right place to talk. After tonight, send an email. We'll pick a proper time and do it right." She pressed her lips together, lifting the velvet box chest high, as if the whole room needed the view. "Just hand them over now, in front of everyone. Transparent and done. Or are you afraid to let people see you can't manage anymore?" A ripple of whispers. A server froze with a tray of Petty's Fours midair. I looked to my son, hoping for the smallest sign to cool the room. Daniel dodged my glance, fingers whitening around his glass. Words nowhere. I turned back to Ashley, eyes level, neither flinching nor crowding. "No," I said, slow. "There will be no keys handed over here, no documents here." The next moment shattered like crystal on tile. Her hand flashed. The slap was dry, clean, and loud in the sudden quiet. My head tipped a fraction. A metallic taste flickered on my tongue, then was gone. I drew a breath, straightened, and smoothed my tie, a reflex to keep my frame. 200 guests held their breath. The warm lights went cold. The sound sank. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," then stopped, and everything froze for a few beats. I let my gaze pass over faces, not fishing for pity or outrage. All I needed was a clear exit, no back and forth, no flare-ups. "I'm done with my part of this evening," I said, low and clear. "Congratulations to you both." I dipped my head, set the glass down, and walked. My shoes clicked steady on the floor, neither hurried nor slow, and I didn't look back. The doors parted. The hallway's chill brushed the skin still warm on my cheek. The parking lot was thinner than when I'd arrived. A breeze lifted my lapel. At the car, the mirror gave me a quick look, the red on my cheek already fading. I didn't take a photo. I fixed the time on the dashboard in memory like a tack. I sat, hands steady, breathed, then opened contacts on my phone. The call screen filled the display as soon as I tapped the name. 2 rings, maybe less. The familiar low voice answered. "I'm here." "It's time," I said, no other word required. "Understood," he replied. "I'll be there first thing." I hung up and rested my head on the seat back for a few seconds, letting the city's vague noise pass through without touching what I thought. In my head, the steps queued up like streetlights in a line. Keys, bank, paperwork, a framework for a clean conversation. Headlights swept the stone wall ahead as the engine turned over. In the mirror, the reception still glowed, silhouettes moving behind glass. I didn't know if Daniel was watching me leave or folding back into his table of friends. I only knew I had to hold a boundary, starting tonight, without delay. The road to the highway was empty. The paint stripes slid under the hood, even as a metronome. I left the radio off so no borrowed words would crowd the hour. From here on, it would be documents and process, not favors and promises. In the morning, I'd take each step in order, skipping none that mattered. I turned onto the street toward home. The trees were quiet as if giving way. The porch light was just bright enough for the steps. The lock glinted under the eave. I closed my hand around the familiar ring, the weight known to my palm. Then I set it back in the drawer, like sliding a page into its proper place. I washed my face cool, letting the warmth in my cheek ebb. In the mirror stood a calm man with nothing more to say tonight. I opened my notebook and wrote mid-page, email only, no key handoff at the reception. Below it, I boxed 4 squares, 4 urgent tasks for morning. I shut off the stove light, then the hall, the old habit unchanged. Phone to silent, alarm earlier than usual. I lay back, breathing even, letting my body learn that the important part had begun. Sleep came slow, but sure, like a decision that had just been signed. Somewhere inside the dream, the evening's color still flickered. The velvet box, a glass's ring, the DJ fading out, a few startled breaths. I didn't stay there. Morning needed empty hands. I would turn public humiliation into steps on paper, each with its receipt. When the early alarm chimed, I was already awake. The night's static gone. The day would start with small things, set in the right order and place, not to strike back, but to build a fence everyone could see. I wanted my son to understand, and the others to simply know where they stood. Before I left, I glanced at the vest. The mark had almost vanished. I didn't need it as proof on my face, only in the file. What needed saying had been said. What needed doing would be done. And last night, I said no in the middle of the reception, with the whole room listening. Morning in Spokane was cold and clear, a skin of mist on the porch steps. I flipped on the kitchen light and spread the red folder across the familiar oak. All the old keys went into a clear zip bag labeled before rekey. I photographed each lock in its current state, time-stamped them for the record. A text from Ashley popped up. Let us keep a set. What if there's an emergency? I answered cleanly. Email only. In emergencies, use the lockbox or 911. No exceptions. The phone rang right after. I silenced it and set it face down. I called Spokane Lock and Key. The text still sounded half asleep, but had one slot. Only 12 to 1, he said quick. I'll take it, I said, listing the 3 locations and that I'd present ID. Have your documents ready, he said, then hung up into the wind on his porch. I ran my task list and ticked each item in bold. 1, rekey the front door, back door, garage, and put a padlock on the tool shed. 2, shut off out-of-scope auto pays and update authorizations at the bank. 3, issue the boundary letter, enable read receipt, file the PDF in the red folder. 4, have Joseph check the lockbox this evening and sign the time in the log. I pulled out red key tags and wrote front mo 1, garage 02, shed 03, then clipped them on. An email from Daniel. Don't be so rigid. Let us keep a set. I replied, please wait for the formal letter this afternoon, and closed the window. Ashley chimed in right behind him. Cutting off money is cruel to the baby, with an angry emoji. I didn't respond. Words need to breathe inside the frame of email. At 11:50, the white van pulled up, blue decal clean on the door. The tech knocked, pulled off a knit cap, handed me the work order, and asked for ID. I showed my license and a utility bill with the matching address and name. Which cylinders exactly? he asked, unzipping a tool roll and setting out new cores. Front, back, garage, plus a padlock for the shed, I said. He snapped a photo of the work order. I signed. The quiet click-click of pins began down the hall. I scooped up the tiny springs he'd shed and set them in a dish so the counter stayed neat. Ashley's video call lit the screen. I let it ring. Family want to inspect the new hardware? The tech asked, a little tentative. I've issued a lockbox policy. We'll handle this by procedure, I said, short and steady. By 12:35, the front door turned like silk with the new key. He moved to the back door, backed out 2 screws, slid the core, squared the latch. The garage hiccuped once. He gave the hinge a shot of oil and the resistance vanished. I tested each key, cycled each door 3 times. Solid, smooth, true. He set the tag keys in a small pouch, handed me the receipt, pen hovering. I need every copy returned within 48 hours, I said, clear as glass. I'll note that, he said. You keep a copy for your file. I paid by transfer, photographed the receipt, and filed it under exhibits. If anything drifts, call me. I'll come right back, he said, and we shook hands. The van backed out, disappeared behind the pines, and the yard went quiet again. Early afternoon, I called the bank and read my customer number per policy. 2-factor pinged my phone. I read the code slowly, cleanly. To update authorizations, please visit a branch to sign, the rep said. I took the red folder and drove 15 minutes to the nearest branch. Behind the glass, the associate smiled, checked my ID, printed the forms. I stated the purpose. Stop out-of-scope autopays and remove legacy secondary authorizations. She marked the signature lines, dated them, and handed me a printed confirmation. The ink was still warm. The paper dried fast. I clipped it into the folder. On the counter, a neat placard, ID required for authorization changes. Easy to see. Walking away, another text from Ashley. Cutting the money is cruel to the baby. I closed the screen. Principal holds all exchanges through logged email. Back home, I opened the laptop and drafted the boundary letter in a neutral voice. I kept the 3 pillars intact: respect, transparency, time limits. 1. All communication moves to email only. Phone will not be used. 2. No one holds keys outside the lockbox. Entry requires me present. 3. Return all copies within 48 hours. Drop them in the lockbox at the porch. I added an emergency protocol, dial 911 and use the lockbox per policy. Subject line plain, read receipt on, PDFs attached in full. When the email sent and delivered blinked, my shoulders dropped a notch. A minute later, Daniel replied, "Got it. I'll try to talk to Ashley." I answered only, "Thank you," so the words stayed inside the frame. The phone rang again, this time the HOA office. The coordinator was polite. We received an urgent request to add key holders. I asked for the official form and current safety policy to cross-check. Best practice is a lockbox with signed acknowledgments for any copies, I said. Please send your policy so we can keep it with the file, she said. I sent the lockbox policy and boundary letter with a brief note. I logged the call, start time, end time, key points. Ashley emailed demanding video of the rekey. I replied, not provided. You can't manage on your own, she shot back, hard words, a little hot. I closed with, please respond within the email-only framework. Thank you, and shut the lid. Near dusk, Joseph knocked, the old black notebook in his hand. What do you need me to do? He asked, peeling off his cap, taking in the kitchen. Help me test the lockbox and sign the time in the log tonight, I said. We stepped onto the porch. The low sun touched the still cold metal. I opened the box, dropped a test envelope, counted to 3, heard the clean click. Joseph checked his watch, wrote the time, initialed, and added lockbox test successful. I took a photo and filed it. A corner of the job clicked shut. How's your son? Joseph asked, quiet, a little sorry for the whole scene. Steady enough. He's silent. I hope he reads the email closely, I said. Joseph nodded. Silence is an answer. Let the paper speak. Pine sap threaded the cold air. The porch held its peace. I poured him hot tea. We sat without many words. After dark, I sorted the red folder into 3 clear stacks. Locks, current state photos, receipt, tagged keys, technical notes, money, authorization forms, update confirmations, list of autopays, communications, boundary letter, lockbox policy, outbound email log. Each stack slid into a slim tray, labeled and clipped with a big binder clip. An email from the bank confirmed the authorization changes, effective immediately. I printed 1 copy, wrote the time received, and initialed the bottom corner for the record. Ashley sent 1 more line. You're overdoing it. I didn't answer. I wrote the event log, only facts and timestamps, no commentary. The kitchen cooled. My breathing evened. My hand stopped the morning tremor. Before bed, I walked the new locks once more. Front door turns smooth. Back door seals tight. The shed padlock shuts with authority. Red key tags hang straight. The numbers match the receipt exactly. The phone stayed on silent, no overnight push alerts. I texted Joseph, thanks for today, and set the phone down. Lights out. Wind combed the leaves outside, steady as a metronome. The long day closed in the right order, nothing outside the line. If more accusations come tomorrow, they'll stand behind the paperwork. I thought briefly of the velvet box and that slap in the crowd. Now the locks are changed, the money flow is closed, and every word lives in email. I don't need a win or a loss, only boundaries that hold day after day. Simple boundaries, strong enough for a house and for quiet. Morning in Spokane was crisp, a fine mist hanging in the birches by the curb. I got to the family clinic 15 minutes ahead of schedule just to be safe. The front desk was quiet, disinfectant in the air, a printer breathing steadily somewhere out of sight. I filled out the consent forms, confirmed an emergency contact, then sat by the window. The wall clock inched forward in neat little clicks. I opened my notebook and logged the time. When the nurse called my name, I stood and realized I was calmer than I'd been the night before. The exam room was small and bright, posters about nutrition and sleep for older adults on the walls. The doctor smiled, shook my hand, asked briefly about my medications and routine. She checked orientation. I said the date, the month, where we were, and why I'd come. The cognitive screen was simple but thorough. Repeat 7 random words, read a string of numbers backwards, copy 2 overlapping shapes, name the pictured objects, answer a few reasoning questions. Blood pressure steady, pulse even. I blew into the spirometer, watched the needle rise and settle nicely. She wrote in quick strokes and asked a couple of things about managing the house and the monthly bills. I answered plainly, enough detail, nothing performative. You're fully lucid, well-oriented, making your own decisions, she concluded, clear as glass. I'll sign a medical competency letter today and email you the PDF. I gave her my email and asked that the subject line be concise with a specific date. No extra medical details, I added. She nodded. Out at the desk, I wrote down her name, the exam time, and the promise to send the letter. They handed me a small appointment slip. I clipped it straight into the red folder. Outside, new sun, lingering cold along the neighbor's fence. In the parking lot, my phone lit up. 3-way call from Ashley and Daniel. If you'll cooperate and hand over a key with the paperwork, we don't have to drag a doctor into this, Ashley said, voice frosty. Daniel jumped in. Everyone's just worried about you, Dad. Don't make this a big deal. I leaned back, kept it even. From now on, email only. Everything runs on paper. Ashley lowered her voice and hammered out, don't make us look bad in the community. I ended the call politely, checked the time, and screenshotted the call log. I filed the image in today, name by hour and minute. A breeze threaded the cracked window. My head felt clean, like the glass had just been wiped. Right at noon, Joseph knocked, old black notebook and a ballpoint in his hand. I poured tea, set a cup by him, and placed the recorder near the edge of the table at the right angle. Start from when the music dipped, I said. He nodded, eyes straight ahead. He wrote a one-page statement, where he was standing, who was near the bar, exactly what Ashley said. He noted the DJ lowering the volume, the clatter of a glass, and the sudden swing of her hand. I photographed the bruise on my cheek. The kitchen light skimmed a faint shine across the edge of the image. At the bottom, Joseph signed, dated, and added his phone number for verification. The ink was still wet. He blew on it lightly, then set the pen down and went quiet for a breath. Paper will shave down the lies, he said, low and steady. We took the packet to the notary around the corner from the bookshop. Doorbell chimed. Paper and ink air slipped into the lungs. The notary checked our IDs and handed over a short perjury warning to read. I read slowly, nodded, and signed by acknowledged and subscribed before me. She scanned the statement line by line, asked one question about time and place, then stamped, thump. A rosy red seal bloomed at the top right, and I felt warmth run through me. Please notarize this boundary letter as well, I said. She nodded and added another seal. The receipt was tidy. I clipped everything into the red folder in NX order. Before we left, I asked for a scan. They said they'd email PDFs within 15 minutes. Mid-afternoon, the clinic's email arrived. Medical competency letter with a clean subject line. I downloaded it, renamed it date time, and dropped it into the exhibits folder I'd set up. The contents were exactly enough: lucid, well-oriented, independent decisions, physical status appropriate for age, not a line too much, not a point missing, the signature crisp as noon sun. Right after, the notary's email landed with PDFs of the witness statement and the stamped boundary letter. I saved them in two places, Drive and USB, then printed warm copies of each. Laid side by side, the three documents looked like a wooden bridge properly joined. I shot a single photo of the set and logged it with the time. Evening, I opened the laptop and typed a short, clean recap. First line restated email only, the scope, and the latest update time. I listed the attachments: medical competency letter, PDF, notarized witness statement, PDF, notarized boundary letter. I CC'd Joseph for transparency and BCC'd myself for a full record. The tone stayed neutral, no commentary, only events and documents. I asked that replies stick to scope and use subject tags for easy cross-reference. Read receipt on, send, delivered, then read, within minutes. I logged the time, shut the notebook, poured warm water to ease the throat. Ashley's reply arrived fast and tangled, denials braided with jabs. You yelled in my face that night, she wrote, and added, our attorney will be in touch. Daniel added a softer line about sitting down properly to talk. I answered tight to the frame, not budging an inch. I accept a meeting under these principles. I proposed a neutral venue, mutual consent to record, and a neutral facilitator. I asked for an agenda and guideline in advance to lock order, timing, and scope. I suggested a notary at the end to acknowledge the minutes, if both sides agreed. I stated we'd only cover 3 buckets: keys and access, related finances, and the incident at the reception. Please attach your agenda beforehand, I wrote, and hit send decisively. I closed the laptop but didn't leave the table yet. I reordered the red folder once more. The medical letter went first. It shuts down the public not competent line. Beside it, the notarized witness statement, its ink still catching light when you tilt it. The notarized boundary letter behind them, a hinge for all conversations to come. I labeled Exhibit C for the doctor, Exhibit E for the statement, Exhibit A for policy. The black marker slid smoothly, the ink's smell barely there. I opened and closed the folder a few times, true and flat, like the lock tumblers earlier in the day. Close to 9, the window was a dark pane with only my ghost in it. I wrote a few journal lines: examined, letter in hand, notarized, recap sent. I reminded myself to keep the story marching on paper, never off the rails of scope. If they try to rewrite tomorrow, the documents will keep the train on track. I turned off the kitchen light and heard some neighbor's kid being shushed to sleep, small as mist. The stair treads creaked once under my step. My chest settled lower. At the nightstand, I glanced at the phone and set it down. No notifications on. The bruise pinched a little, less than yesterday, just like it should. I let myself smile, knowing I'd set the first brick for the cross-examination to come. Before sleep, I thought of Joseph, the notary's stamp, the doctor's nod. Each piece small, together a wall just tall enough. No higher, no show. That wall keeps the house safe from pushes with no footing. If the emails hail down in the morning, I'll still answer inside the frame. Tonight I let the roof take the wind and breathe evenly. I slept with the quiet of a file in order, ready to rake the yard and pin the rules before the coming sit-down. Morning in Spokane was clear and cold. The clouds snagged on the black firs by the street. I poured coffee, opened the red folder, and ran through the to-dos I'd written on the first page. Today there was only one big job: set the field for the meeting and lock the rules. I put on a warm coat, slid my notebook into a pocket, and drove to the community center. Dew still streaked the road by the park. The lake lay flat as glass. The front desk opened right on time. Faint disinfectant in the air of the lobby. I said I needed room B tomorrow morning, 1 hour, with cushion time on both ends. The manager checked the calendar, nodded, and asked how I wanted the room set. I requested a long table, 8 chairs, outlets along the wall, plus 1 spare. Are mutual recordings allowed? I asked. She flipped to the policy sheet and pointed at the line. Yes, as long as you respect shared space, she said, then printed a confirmation. I read the confirmation carefully. The booking code sat bold in the top right corner. I signed, paid the fee, and asked for the room diagram so I could mark seating. She added the safety handout, maximum occupancy, in the building hotline. I clipped everything into the red folder and labeled it, Room B, 10 Shore 11 Shore. On my way out, I stopped by the green bulletin board. A small meeting in progress placard hung there. I made a note to borrow it tomorrow. In the car, I drafted the first email of the day. Room B confirmed. I attached a photo of the confirmation and directions to the room. I restated the 1-hour window with 15 minutes of setup and wrap on both ends. I set a cap of 2 people per side, plus an HOA liaison as a neutral facilitator. I confirmed mutual recording with the facilitator holding the backup copy. Ashley replied almost instantly. Polite wording, hard intent. She pushed to move it to a cafe. Warmer, more family-friendly. She wanted to bring 2 friends as witnesses, ban recording, and preview the documents. Daniel followed with a short line about hard to get away with the baby. I read every sentence, then answered calmly, anchored to what was already set. I kept the neutral venue and kept room B at the confirmed time. I reiterated the 5-person limit, 2 per side plus the neutral facilitator. Mutual recording allowed. The facilitator holds the copy for transparency. No originals in advance, just a list of the exhibit categories that will be shown. I attached agenda march on guideline V1.1 so everyone could see the frame and pacing. Near noon, the HOA wrote back and offered a community liaison to facilitate if both sides agreed. I accepted in a single clean sentence, thanked them, and CC'd everyone. In V1.2, I tightened what needed to be non-negotiable. The meeting goal was 1 sentence. Scope was 3 topics. Timing, 5 minutes to confirm rules, 45 minutes of yes-no Q&A, 10 minutes to close. I added a rule, 6 questions per side, each one yes-no with a single follow-up sentence. Monologues or interruptions earn a warning. Second time ends the session early. Evidence must show date and source. A copy goes to the facilitator. Recording, 2 devices, 1 per side. The backup goes to the facilitator. A mobile notary will arrive at 11:05 to acknowledge the minutes. After sending agenda, our guideline V1.2, I headed to the county building. The county assessor's hallway smelled of old paper. Dark wood door frames held their quiet. I asked for a current title extract, just the heading and parcel ID. The clerk asked for the most recent update date, then printed a public record printout. I skimmed it, checked parcel name, address, and current ownership status. I thanked her, slid it into the red folder, and covered it with a clear sleeve so the corners wouldn't curl. On the stone steps outside, my phone buzzed. Another long email from Ashley. A list of 5 close friends she wanted in the room, plus a request for free-form statements. I paused and answered briefly, attaching V1.2 again. Each side may bring one witness. Witnesses sign in and do not speak during the session. All questions go through the facilitator. No crosstalk, no emotion spliced into the minutes. In the afternoon, I went home, opened the laptop, and built the meeting pack. I drafted a placemat with the seating layout. Names bold, large, easy to read. I made a sign-in sheet with check-in, out times, in a roll column. I printed tent cards for Michael, Ashley, Daniel, Joseph, and the liaison. I proofed the spelling one last time and filed them in their own sleeve. I stacked agenda guideline V1.2, the placemat, sign-in, and the name cards in order. I added the fresh title extract and labeled it Exhibit D, Title, Assessor. I opened the supply box, took out the small timer, put in new batteries, and test beeped it a few times. The chirp was short, clear, not too loud, perfect for a closed room. Both recorders were fully charged, cards formatted, mics tested clean. I zipped the whole kit into a single file named with date, time, and session code. In the email, I listed the contents and where each document sat. I CC'd the HOA liaison, BCC'd myself, and asked for a simple received. Joseph replied first with one word, received. True to his sparing style, the liaison answered a bit later, room B confirmed, and I will keep time. Ashley sent one last ask. Can we start 30 minutes earlier? I checked the room sheet. Someone else had the cushion slot. I answered politely, the schedule is locked to avoid overlap. Daniel tossed in a line about, we're tied up earlier, then went quiet when I pointed back to the guideline. I hit send, closed the red folder, and let my pulse slow half a beat. Evening leaned in. Sunlight slid off the cold stone steps. I brewed a fresh pot of tea, sat down, and read V1.2 end to end. Every item was clear. No extra words, no missing steps, surface flat as glass. I pictured the long table, the timer in the middle, the liaison marking time. Any push to change the rules would stop at lines already written. My phone blinked with another short, needling note from Ashley. Tomorrow we'll ask about the deed and powers of attorney, she wrote. I looked at the title extract lying still, its corner catching the kitchen light. I didn't answer. I let V1.2 speak for me one last time. On the red folder, I stuck a label at the top edge. Meeting, Room B, tenor. Late, I packed the tools into a black canvas bag and zipped it tight. Timer, recorders, markers, clips, and pens in one pocket. The tent cards lay flat like roof tiles, not a corner bent. The sign-in sheet sat on top, ready to open as soon as we walked in. I took one slow loop through the house, dimmed most lights, left the kitchen warm, and the living room dusk soft. Before bed, I ticked the box next to set the field. Quiet work, but every line had been set in the right place. No one dragged me to a cafe. No one jammed extra bodies into the room. No one banned recording. No one reached for documents ahead of time. I closed the notebook and listened to the wind stroke the pines, steady and light. On the nightstand, the red folder with worn corners looked like a small shield. I rested a hand on the label, Room B, 10 rare 11 écuernes, and felt the fine matte grain. Tomorrow we'll enter on time, take the right seats, and say the right words. Yes, no isn't a muzzle. It's the track that keeps the train straight. When the notary's stamp thumps at the end, the off-topic skirmishes will fall off the table. I turned out the light and let night blanket the house. The rules were published, Agenda, sure guideline V1 McTwo was out. Room B was locked. The facilitator had accepted. The title extract waited like a card for its turn. All that remained was sleep, and to carry some calm into morning. I closed my eyes and saw the wooden sign. Spokane Community Center, Room B. In my mind, I opened the door, set the tent cards, laid out the sign-in sheet, and put the timer dead center. Joseph signed on a straight line. The liaison started the clock, eyes steady. Ashley might come early to try and reshuffle seats, but the guideline would hold her in frame. Daniel might duck responsibility, but the minutes would record that fact. And me, I only had to follow the order the words had already set. I smiled in the dark, not for any victory, but for order. A small order, enough to block a gust that wanders off course. Tomorrow the table will have 4 edges, each one a small boundary, and the story will run straight through the timer, steady as breathing. I let the night close and let the words sleep 1 hour more. 10 o'clock sharp, I pushed open the door to Room B. Cool air, a faint clean wood smell. The rectangle table was already set, name cards in a straight line, the timer in the middle like a single unblinking eye. I signed the sign-in sheet, set the red folder in front of me, and checked both recorders, red light steady. Joseph signed right after me and sat still, hands resting on his beat-up black notebook. Ashley and Daniel came in murmuring to each other, their eyes skimming my document bag. The liaison stood at the head of the table and read Guideline V1. 2, slow, clear, reminding us of yes-no answers and time limits. The wording left no wiggle room, like a bright white touchline on a field. We all nodded to confirm mutual recording. The timer gave a quick beep to start the session. Their side went first. Q1. Ashley asked if I had refused to hand over spare keys for emergencies. Yes, I said, short and plain, sliding Exhibit A to the edge, the key box policy and the boundary letter. The liaison logged the exhibit code, announced 18 seconds, and gestured to continue. Q2. Daniel leaned in and asked whether I had ever agreed to let them manage my expenses. No, I said, placing Exhibit B, the bank authorization update, with the stamp still warm. He frowned and looked down at his cup. The timer ticked to the next question. Q3. Ashley went straight at it. Was I competent to make decisions about my property and daily life? Yes, I answered, laying out Exhibit C, the medical competency letter. Doctor's signature, neat and crisp. The liaison nodded, read the exhibit code, and drew a short line on the minutes. Q4. She pushed her voice up a notch. Had I cut off support to punish them? No, I said, sliding the boundary letter forward, its neutral language flat as glass. The liaison logged it and reminded, yes, no only, her glance brushing Ashley like a caution. Q5. Daniel asked if I had brought the deed today. No, I answered, offering Exhibit D, the county title extract. Today's scope wasn't transfers. The liaison reread the out-of-scope line, then tapped the timer. Q6. Ashley swung for a last hit, demanding a power of attorney at the table. No, I said. The turn ended. The liaison noted, refer to proper legal channel. The folder stayed still as stone. Ashley inhaled, trying to launch into a monologue about the baby and keeping you safe. The liaison raised a hand and blocked it with one sentence. Yes, no question. Please, no monologues. The room thinned into a brief tea-steam silence. I opened the red folder, restacked the exhibits, and waited for my segment. The timer hopped. A beep marked the beat. The liaison invited my questions. Q7. I looked directly at Ashley. Last night, did you demand the keys in front of the crowd? She hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. Lips pressed, eyes sliding toward the door. The liaison logged the answer. I set down Exhibit E, the witness statement, and the timestamp for when the DJ dropped the music. The air shifted tone. like someone had pulled a curtain and the light hit harder. Q8. Did you slap me in front of the guests? I don't remember clearly, she said, the words skimming the table like a thin thread. The liaison wrote, not confirmed. I slid a clear sleeve forward and set the photo of the bruise beside the statement. Q9. I turned to Daniel. Did the two of you ask the HOA to add another key holder without me? He exhaled. We did ask, he said, and flicked a look at the liaison as if searching for an exit. I submitted Exhibit F, HOA, log, Josh emails, timestamps lined straight as a spirit level. Q10, back to Ashley. Did you send an email saying I was not competent? She bit her lip. Yes, she said, and the corner of Exhibit C sat right there like a mirror. The liaison marked the code, hand steady, voice lake flat. Q11. I asked it short and clean. Who currently has any copies of Keys to My Home? Silence, deep enough to hear a pen barrel whisper against the paper. The liaison recorded no answer, then read out the 48-hour return deadline per Exhibit A. Daniel wetted his lips. Ashley stared at the table, her nail digging the page edge. Q12. I closed with, do you both agree to email only and not to enter without me present? They looked at each other and said nothing. The room seemed to shrink. The timer gave one dry beep. Ashley asked for 5 minutes of free remarks and a look at all originals. The liaison shook her head, pointed to Guideline V1, 2, and said, out of scope remarks or decline. Ashley's mouth tightened. A chair leg whispered on the floor. Daniel nudged his foot against the table to hide the twitch. I stayed still, palm resting lightly on the red folder, feeling the fine tooth of the paper. The liaison asked for 30 seconds to review the minutes, then read the conclusions. First, her voice even, no POA or deed today. Any transfer is out of scope. Second, she continued, entry follows the key box rule. Return all copies within 48 hours. Third, our firm, communication is email only. Any misstatement will be corrected by addendum. Her pen drew the last line. The sentences stood straight as a new fence. The back door opened. The notary stepped in. Black document bag, wooden seal polished and bright. At 11:05, the notary checked IDs and had each of us flip front and back. We signed the confrontation minutes. The liaison signed as preparer. The notary's stamp landed with a tidy thump. Fresh ink bloomed, warm and clean, like a newly poured pot of tea. Ashley hesitated at the page for acknowledging exhibits. She asked to add a note. The liaison allowed one neutral line. Daniel's signature was brief, the letters slanting, maybe from nerves, maybe a slick pen. The notary handed out certified copies, a gold staple in each top right corner. I gathered Exhibits AF back into the folder and took one measured breath to level my pulse. Joseph squared the edge of the sign-in sheet, set the pen back in its groove, eyes fixed on the papers. The liaison announced session concluded and reminded us of the D+2 18-hour deadline for key returns. The room loosened, chair legs whispered, the light on the table sharpened. Ashley stood first, lips in a thin curve, setting her pen down like a cold pebble. Daniel said, we'll review with counsel, but his eyes skipped past Exhibit C fast. I folded the tent cards into the bag, clicked the timer off with one last test press. Both recorders finalized their files. The red lights died at the same moment, like two small lamps going out. I thanked the liaison, thanked the notary, and gave Joseph a short nod. The door to room B clicked shut behind us. Solid, clean hardware. Floor wax hung in the hall. A stripe of sun slanted through the glass and laid a thin gold band. I stood still a beat, palm on the red folder, the cover warming under my hand. Outside, the air carried damp pine and far-spaced birds. I thought of those 3 closing lines, of the ink still warm on the minutes. The yes-no answers sat neat in their grid, each one pinned to an exhibit like a steel nail. They will hold, no matter how many stories try to pile on top. This afternoon, I'll scan and back up, rename the files by date time, and send a concise recap. For now, I walk the lot slowly and let out a thin, quiet breath. In the rear view, room B slid away like a small frame photo. On the passenger seat, the red folder lay at an angle. AF peaking, label straight. I started the engine and pulled out, not feeling like I'd beaten anyone. Just that order had clicked shut. Today's slap wasn't loud, but the stamp's thud will echo a long time in memory. And that little timer did its job as a fair metronome. Tomorrow, if rebuttal emails arrive, the minutes will answer for me, line by line. I let a thin smile turn, merged into traffic, and left the Spokane Community Center in the mirror. The door to room B clicked shut. The hallway still smelled of floor wax, and the last scrape of pen on the minutes seemed to ring in my ears. The notary gave us a few more minutes at a side table to finish the formalities. One last ID check, a line-by-line review of the confrontation minutes, then a clean, compact thump of the stamp on the signature page. Ashley hesitated at the exhibit acknowledgement box and asked to add a note. The liaison nodded. One neutral line, reviewed, with no change to content. Daniel's signature was short, the pen slanting a touch. I slid my certified copy into the red folder and felt the paper warm under my palm. The notary said a courteous goodbye and offered to swing by if I wanted the declaration notarized later the same day. I drove home through the pines, cool air threading the car. I set the red folder on the kitchen table, turned on the warm light, and poured what was left of the tea. Laptop open, I created a file named Declaration Boundaries Date Time. DocX and began typing. Steady, neutral, no verdicts. From here on, communication is email only. Entry to my home is via the key box in emergencies, or 911. Otherwise, no entry without me. All copies of keys must be returned within 48 hours of issuance. Deadline 6:00 p.m. D+2, dropped into the porch key box. No handoffs. Finances. No auto pays or authorizations beyond what I have already updated. Violations will trigger a soft no trespass, and I will call non-emergency to make a record. No arguments. I added an effective date line. The declaration takes effect when the email is sent, with the notarized minutes attached as its basis. I printed 2 copies on heavy stock with wide margins and a signature block at the bottom. A quick call to the notary? 5 minutes later, she replied, "I'll be back in your area. 15 minutes. While I waited, I assembled the attachments. The notarized confrontation minutes and a zip of exhibits AF, key box policy and boundary letter, bank authorization updates, medical competency letter, title extract, the witness statement plus bruise photo, HOA log, emails. I renamed each file by date time, self-explanatory at a glance. I drafted the recap email, subject declaration and keys deadline 48H, 18 aurora D+2 to Ashley and Daniel, CC the HOA liaison, BCC myself. The doorbell. The notary stood under the porch eave, dark coat, that familiar wooden seal in her bag. She read the ID confirmation aloud. I signed both copies. Warm ink feathered faintly along the paper grain. The stamp landed, short, dry, decisive, like a bolt sliding home. "You keep this one, I'll scan the other and email it right away," she said, slipping each into a moisture sleeve. I thanked her and filed my copy in front of the minutes in the red folder. When the door closed, the kitchen felt like a small records room, everything in its place. I sat down, opened the prepared recap, and checked each bullet. 1, email only for all exchanges. 2, entry only through the key box, 911, otherwise unauthorized. 3, return all keys by 6:00 p.m., D+2, drop them in the key box, no handoffs. I attached the notarized declaration, the notarized minutes, and the exhibits zip. The last line was an action line, bright as a posted sign. After 6:00 p.m., D+2, the soft no trespass auto activates. I hit send, watch delivered light up, and let my shoulders drop. 5 minutes later, the notary's scans arrived. I saved a second copy. Caution is often just a habit that keeps me calm. Reactions blew in faster than a stray gust. Ashley wrote long, "The minutes are one-sided. I don't accept." Plus the familiar, "Our attorney will be in touch." And a few swells of "family is talking," and "you're making this bigger than it is." The line under a notary stamp did not so much as tremble. 3 minutes later, Daniel peeled off into a private note. "I'll return one set, but keep one for the baby's safety." I reply, hauled him back into the lane. "Thank you for responding. Please reread Clause 3 of the Declaration. Return all copies, no just in case. Email only, no exceptions. No sparring, no heat, just citation in the 6 to 1 p.m. D+2 deadline, a concrete post in the ground." The afternoon hummed with the printer's small spin and the click of clips. I restacked the red folder in its new order. Declaration up front, minutes behind. Exhibit zip labeled with send time. The HOA liaison replied, "Received, will keep a print on file," and offered a received stamp if I brought a hard copy by during office hours. I printed a set for stamping, squared the edges, and clipped the corner. Out on the porch, the key box felt colder than usual. I touched it to remember the feel of its clean click. That evening, the house held still as syrup. Subject lines from Ashley popped up now and then. I archived them on site. Same loops, no need to reread. D+1 went by on small tasks of a one-person household. Water the plants, wipe the counter, test the new locks turning smooth. Ashley sent another scolding note about embarrassing the family. Daniel was silent. I answered exactly once, reply. All, please adhere to the declaration and guideline. The 6 p.m. D+2 deadline remains. The HOA liaison added one cool, courteous line. Please comply with the issued documents. Any off-scope disputes belong in the appropriate channels. Another latch slid across, light, snug. D+2, the afternoon ran short. I tidied the porch and set an empty envelope out in case anyone needed a visual cue, but no one asked. At 5:40 p.m., a small click sounded in the metal box. I opened it to a damp-cornered yellow envelope. Inside, 2 keys, front 01 and garage 2, and a blunt slip. "I'll return the rest later." Daniel's handwriting. I photographed the envelope, both tags and the note, and filed them in the key log. I checked the cuts against the tags, tested the front door and garage, clean engagement. On the log sheet, I bolded "received" for 2 lines. Shed 03 stayed red. I drafted a reminder. Shed 03 still missing. Deadline 18 were today per the declaration. Please drop it in the key box. After the cutoff, the soft no trespass activates. CC to the liaison, BCC to myself. At 5:58 p.m., another crisp click. I opened the box. The third key in a plain, thin envelope. I checked the tag, tested the shed lock. The tool shed snapped shut, smooth, no bind. Another photo, one fat check mark on Sheds 03. It felt like setting the last brick. Warm kitchen light, I sat down to write. Final recap and closeout. First line, confirmation that front 01, garage 02, and shed 03 were recovered, with 3 received photos from the key log attached. Second line, email only remains the channel, no unaccompanied entry, emergencies through the key box, sure 911. Third, if violations recur, I will enforce the soft no trespass and contact non-emergency per policy. I attached the declaration in minutes again for a tidy packet and sent it. The liaison replied, "Received," and invited me to bring a print for a received stamp. Coat on, I stopped by the HOA before closing. The lobby was quiet, smelled faintly of plastic sleeves. The red received stamp sat snug in the clerk's hand. "We'll keep one set," she said. "Yours gets the stamp here." Thump. Fresh red. A final note at the end of a bar. I thanked her and slid the packet into a larger moisture sleeve, careful as if carrying glass. Outside, the sky had gone dark slate. The western shelf of clouds sank into charcoal. Back home, I set the red folder on the table, uncapped a black marker, and wrote a new label. Closed. I stuck it straight along the top. One last reorder. Declaration, notarized. Confrontation minutes, notarized. Exhibits AF zip. 3 key log photos, HOA receive stamp. Everything tight, flat, square. Only the kettle made a sound. The house exhaled a long, even breath. I texted Joseph, all keys recovered. Thank you for the statement. And got his 2-word reply. Noted, read. The kind of brevity that settles the mind. Ashley's emails went quiet after the deadline, like a clock gone still. Daniel added one short line, understood, on the final recap thread, then nothing. I wasn't waiting for an apology or hunting for an admission. Everything that needed saying lived in the papers, stamped, time-stamped, delivered. If someday someone's memory tries to change color, these pages will hold their ink. I stood and walked the new locks, a final turnout of habit. Front door smooth, back door tight, the shed's padlock doing its job like day one. On the hook by the counter, the red key tags hung in order. Now only my set remains. I opened the key box once more. The tiny hinge gave a thread-thin sound. I closed it again. Every point of entry had returned to the proper order. Clear, lawful, transparent. Night settled. I dimmed the lights, leaving a small one in the kitchen. On the table lay the red folder marked closed, a thin shield, tough enough. I thought of the early days when everything was a snarl, and of a slap in a crowded room that pushed the story back onto rails. From the key box to email only, from the doctor's letter to the yes-no with exhibits, then the declaration and the HOA received stamp. Each piece slotted into its square. Not a flashy win, just order, locked in by documents and deadlines. I turned off the kitchen light last and let the house slide into quiet. Outside, the wind brushed the pines, a fine sound, like a signature drawn long and finished clean. Tomorrow I'll file the red folder between taxes and insurance. Things you only reach for when needed. Tonight I let everything be. Keys returned, channels closed, boundaries written and sealed. I went to bed with the lightness of a single sheet of paper, the sheet that will answer any later versions of the story for me. And that's how this chapter closes, not loud, but clear. If you like the story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts on this story in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box on the left.